Welcome to the final video of the year, a ranking of every single game I played in the last 12 months. I did play a lot of games, and I thought it would be fun to have a fine look at all of them at one place, for Christmas time's sake. Before we start, there's only two simple rules I want to establish. Number 1, most of these entries will be very brief, as I already talked about a lot of them in their own videos, and there's no reason to go through my take on them again and make this video longer than it should be. After all, talking about 60 plus games in more detail than a few sentences would be a lot. And the second rule, I won't be talking about any of the roguelikes, card games, co-op games or multiplayer games I played this year. I played those kinds of games for very different reasons and they give me very different experiences compared to the single player games I play, which will make comparing and ranking them more complicated than necessary. They'll get their own time in the spotlight eventually, just not today. This list probably won't even include every single player game I finished this year, as the cutoff date for games to be added into the list was 30 November. I wanted to avoid delaying this video just so I can add even more games, and I also didn't want to end up rushing some games just to add them, not even mentioning that there's absolutely zero chance to finish some of them. Also, please keep in mind that this list is purely subjective and based on my personal enjoyment. Just because a certain game is lower on the list than another one doesn't necessarily mean it's genuinely worse, I just enjoyed it less. Now, without further ado, the prestigious title of the worst game I played this year goes to Enemy Front. Easily. This is maybe not really super fair, as I played this game because I was in a mood for a run-of-the-mill linear World War II shooter. And that's exactly what I got. Bad controls and gameplay, uninspired missions, stupid AI, and an ambitious story that completely falls flat on its face. To continue the trend of truly bad games on this list, on the 64th place we have Warhammer Housebein, the worst ARPG I ever played, messing up almost everything that makes that type of games enjoyable. It has awful skill design and progression, all of its enemy types are exhausted by the first act, its story is extremely forgettable and mainly, it's repetitive, and not in the way that makes the best in the genre so much fun. On the 63rd place we have LEGO Hobbit, the worst LEGO game I played yet, feeling more like a lackluster, boring DLC to the LEGO Lord of the Rings instead of its own thing, and with that we are leaving the realm of genuinely bad games. On the 62nd place we have Dawn of War 2, and I already talked about the reasons for why I dislike it so much in this video. On the 61st place we have Events Remains, which is a very underwhelming platformer puzzle game which I already talked about more in this video. Number 60 goes to Thomas Was Alone, which I'll talk about in the same video, and I dislike it for similar reasons, plus I can't stand its self-serious tone. On the 59th place is Aliens vs Predator, a game with a lot of potential that went nowhere because of how lackluster and repetitive all three of its gameplay styles feel, not even mentioning the constant reuse of levels and the confusing, disappointing story. On the 50th place is Postal 2, a game that I enjoyed more than I thought I would because of its structure, but its combat is still too rough around the edges and its humor often too childish and wannabe edgy to place it any higher. On the 57th place is Tomb Raider Underworld, probably the most disappointing game I played this year, which I already talked about in this video. On the 56th place is Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, the worst age game on this entire list, which I also talked about in the same video. On the 55th place is Alba, a wildlife adventure, a cute game about exploration, which doesn't put enough emphasis on the exploring. On the 54th place is Lost Ruins, the worst Metroidvania I played this year, mainly because it barely is one, playing more like a strange mix between an immersive sim and a side-scrolling JRPG, which also doesn't sound that bad, but this game is also dragged down by clumsy controls and boring exploration. On the 53rd place is Need for Speed Most Wanted, a racing game with a lot of interesting ideas, most of which are sadly undercooked. What also doesn't help is the repetitive structure of unlocking upgrades for the car you're currently using, and then immediately switching to a new car once you have them all, meaning you don't even get to really use those upgrades, which wouldn't be so bad if every car didn't use the same ones, and often reuse racetracks in the process. On the 52nd place is Ghost Runner, a game with a great movement and combat system, but it gets dragged down by its awful anime and boss fight design together with a super predictable, soulless story. On the 51st place is Broforce, a decent, surprisingly tactical action platformer with too many difficulty spikes for my taste. On the 50th place is Dirt 3, a racing game with great driving physics and visuals, but also an underwhelming campaign that unnecessarily pats itself out at the end. On the 49th place is Assemble with Care, which is a cute puzzle game about putting things apart and back together. It's a bit too much of a simple mobile game to be put any higher, but it's a nice way to relax for an hour or two. On the 48th place is Donut Country, which is the exact same case as the previous entry, a cute, satisfying game that got as high as it could within this list. On the 47th place is Lara Croft Go, which joins the exclusive club of puzzle games I actually enjoy. On the 46th place is Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, a game with a fun combat open for experimentation, but also occasionally really frustrating level and mission design. On the 45th place is Papers, Please, which is a game that manages to make something boring fun, thanks to constantly adding new mechanics and having a variety of hidden story paths you can take. On the 44th place is Mirror's Edge Catalyst, which is a game with incredibly smooth gameplay, art style, soundtrack and level design, but its story and side content are unfortunately too bad to make it truly great. On the 43rd place is Unpacking, a cute game that refer to the number 49 and 48 on this list. On the 42nd place is Zero Escape, Zero Time Dilemma, which I will talk about in this video. It's a mess, but it's also a mess I enjoyed. On the 41st place is Condemned, Criminal Origins, which is a tense horror game with a fantastic atmosphere, melee combat and a story that goes nowhere. On the 40th place is Wolfenstein The Old Blood, an old school spin on the modern Wolfenstein games that occasionally went too hard on the old school part for my taste. On the 39th place is Vanquish, which is a game with an amazing, free-flowing TPS gameplay, but also a mech universe, story and characters. On the 30th place is The Crew 2, which is a game with an amazing variety of content, whether that means the activity, format or even the vehicle you're using. And I would love to place it higher, but its main fault is the uneven quality of that content, not even mentioning that it's a game with an enormous open world, but also barely encourages you to explore it. On 37th place is Spyro Reignited Trilogy, which is a fun, varied collection of collected tones, but I dislike its general tone too much to place it any higher. On the 36th place is Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun, a fantastic strategy game that tested my patience with its super high difficulty just a bit too much. On the 35th place is Everhood, which is a surprisingly dark indie RPG which I already talked about in this video. On the 34th place is Yoku's Island Express, which is a really interesting, kinda weird pinball take on the Metroidvania genre. On the 33rd place is Blasphemous, which is another great Metroidvania I played this year, with an interesting universe, world design and combat. I just wish it occasionally pushed you in the right direction a tiny bit more. On the 32nd place is Splinter Cell Blacklist, which is a fantastic mix between a spy stealth game and a tactical shooter, allowing you to freely pick your playstyle, all of this combined with a tense plot and smooth controls. Its story unfortunately doesn't go anywhere and not all of its missions are equally great, but I still enjoy it a lot. On the 31st place, I finally fulfilled my national duty with Mafia. It has a lot of really frustrating and poorly aged aspects, but its story, mission variety and atmosphere are enough to place it so high on the list. On the 30th place is Jet Set Radio, which I already talked about in this video, and it's impressive that it got so far thanks to its vibes. On the 29th place is Grim Fandango, which is a great adventure game with amazing humor, characters and atmosphere, but I'm also not sure how you're supposed to finish it without a guide. On the 28th place is Bad and Theater, a really interesting game all about timelines and different outcomes. It's a bit too short, but it's also one of the most unique games I played this year. On the 27th place is AI The Somnium Files, which I already talked about in this video, still planning to get to that sequel. On the 26th place is Here Comes Nico, which is a fun, super cute collectathon with some of the smoothest replatforming controls I ever seen. On the 25th place is Final Fantasy X2, a super interesting, unique JRPG which I already talked about in this video. On the 24th place is Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, which is some of the smoothest combat systems in an FPS game I ever played with many great moments, but I still didn't enjoy it as much as the number 23 on the list, Wolfenstein The New Order, which had worse combat but also a way better story than New Colossus. On the 22nd place is Day of the Tentacle, a game with a great structure, sense of humor and a lot of nonsensical puzzles. Again. On the 21st place is Middle-earth Shadow of War, a fantastic open world game which I already talked about in this video. On the 20th place is A Short Hike, a cute, relaxing game about exploring, one that does it right this time. On the 19th place is Haikyuu The Robot, which maybe takes a bit too much from Hollow Knight, but it's not the best Metroidvania I played this year. On the 18th place is Broken Age, which has a really disappointing second half, but it's still a super charming adventure game. The previous two games from its developer on this list may have more imaginative and complex gameplay, but I simply like the world and characters of Broken Age more, not even mentioning that its more straightforward puzzle design ultimately made it much more enjoyable. On the 17th place is Deadly Premonition, which I already talked about in this video. The more I think about this game, the more I get sad about its aspects that prevent it from being one of the best games I ever played, but it definitely deserves a spot in the top 20. On the 16th place is Valkyria Chronicles, which is a great tactical JRPG with a surprisingly good take on an anime World War II. I just wish some of its missions weren't so frustrating. On the 15th place is Shanti Risk is Revenge, which is another great title from the series I fell in love with last year, and I can't wait to get the remaining games from it. On the 14th place is WWE 2K23, a content-rich, extremely fun wrestling game which revives my passion for the medium. On the 13th place is Severed Steel, a super polished FPS with an amazing vibe, soundtrack and one of the best movement systems I ever seen. Actually, no, it is the best. On the 12th place is One Shot, which I will talk about in this video. Definitely one of the best games of the Undertale variety. On the 11th place is Monster Hunter World, which I already talked about in this video. And that reminds me that I really need to get back to playing it. And now we're finally getting to the top 10. Picking them was honestly pretty hard, but here they are, the absolute best games I played this year. On the 10th place is Yakuza 4, which I already talked about here. Yakuza 5 is already waiting in the line, and from what I heard about it, I hope it manages to get into top 3 next year. Remember the second rule I mentioned? Well, I'm going to make one exception. On the 9th place is Dead by Daylight, one of my favorite multiplayer games, one with great variety of characters and possible playstyles, intense, short matches and tons of tributes for a massive horror fan such as myself. It's also a multiplayer game which I didn't get sick of for over a year now, and I'm excited to see it grow and improve more and more. On the 8th place is Jedi Fallen Order, which is the best Star Wars game I played, with smooth combat, captivating exploration and an emotional story, feeling like a new take on the series without diverging from the original spirit of it too much. On the 7th place is The Evil Within 2, which is now one of my favorite horror games, with superb atmosphere, scares, story and tactical gameplay. It's said that this series might be dead now, but the recent games of its developer more than make up for it. On the 6th place is Resident Evil Village, and another fantastic survival horror game which I will talk about in this video. Evil Within 2 almost beat it, but Village's variety and combat is just tiny bit better. On the 5th place is Persona 5 Strikers, an amazing spin-off which I will talk about in this video. On the 4th place is Forza Horizon 4, which I will talk about in this video, and it's still my favorite racing game overall. But I recently started to play Forza Horizon 5, so I'll see if it manages to beat it in quality. On the 3rd place is Persona 5, which I already talked about in this video. It's still my favorite RPG overall, and I recently decided to continue with this series and started playing Persona 3. But there's also another related title I should have a look at to see how it compares soon. On the 2nd place is Killer 7, which I will talk about in this video, and I'm honestly surprised it got so high, but yeah, this game is just too much of its own thing to be ignored. It has a super rich story, gameplay and a visual style, and that's why I love it so much. It can't be compared to anything else, and even though it has plenty of rough edges, it's one of the coolest feeling games I ever played. And the best game I played this year is... I didn't expect this when I decided to just try this game on a whim one day. In many ways, Disco Elysium is a dream game of mine. A title that combines aspects of RPG, point-and-click adventure and a visual novel into one incredible package. It's gorgeous to look at, beautiful to listen to, has the best writing I ever seen in a game, where that means it's amazing dialogue, some of my favorite characters in gaming overall or solid world building. Its gameplay flows incredibly well thanks to the day cycle, which slowly unlocks new content without making you overwhelmed, a freedom of choice in its main quest and a huge offering of high quality side quests, adding even more character and life to its fascinating world. It's also somehow consistently one of the funniest games I ever played without disrupting the experience, and mainly, it's a story that feels both personal and larger than life, telling a tale of its protagonist and of the people living in a world recovering from hell at the same time, all while a great detective mystery is unraveling in the background. It's a shame we might never get another game like it, but if nothing else, I'm glad we got this one. The best game I played this year, and one of my new favorite games overall. So that's it for the final video of this year. I hope you enjoyed it and are having a nice Christmas. I'm doing fine-ish. School is actively trying to kill me, and one of my favorite podcasts suddenly ended after a long hiatus, which hurts more than I expected it to. But I've seen enough good movies, heard enough good music both of the guilty pleasure and truly great variety, and, as this video showed, played enough good games to make life worth living. Yay! I didn't manage to upload as much this year as I would have liked, so I hope I will manage to next year. Hopefully. I'm not going to make any official plans for the next year in this video, considering I'm about to finish my last year of college and I don't know what will happen afterwards, but what I can do is promise that I will try, as I always do. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video or anything else I ever made, it means everything to me. My name is Spunky, take care and I'll see you soon.
It's so warm at home. weather sucks.